Asina never imagined she would meet her death beneath a blazing sun, far from her homeland, with a stranger's sword pointed at her throat, as he asked if she had any last words. In the Cromwall Empire, known as the ruler of the North, she had lived a life of luxury in a grand manner, adorned in beautiful dresses and dazzling jewelry, but those weren't what thrilled her. What she truly desired was to explore the world. Each new place set her soul alight. Her journeys began in the north, from ancient sites to the Fen settlement in Siberia, and before long, she had visited every nation on the northern continent. Naturally, she set her sights on the south, attempting to cross the desert to reach Croatia. But she got lost, surrounded by endless sand and running low on water. Then in the distance she spotted people and ran toward them, calling out. To her relief, they were real. She only wanted to ask for directions to Croatia, but now, in the present, one of those people is threatening to kill her. She wonders if he holds some grudge against Croatia. The man repeats his question, any last words, and when she doesn't answer, he tells her goodbye and swings his sword. Asina hurriedly begs the man to wait, insisting she hasn't said her last words yet and pleading with him to put his sword away, claiming he can't kill her. Confused, the man asks why not. Terrified, Asina debates internally whether to resort to using her looks to survive, but decides she has no choice. She slips off her cloak and declares it's because she is the most beautiful woman on the continent. The man, baffled, asks, what? Asina confidently explains that every country should protect beauty and that it's only natural to preserve what is beautiful. She asks if he agrees, but he says nothing, then laughs and calls her funny, asking if those are truly her last words as he swings his sword at her again. Realizing her tactic has failed, Asina quickly dodges and scolds him for attacking without warning, saying that's against the rules. The man scoffs at the idea of rules in killing, saying that in the end, one survives and the other dies. The intensity of his eyes reminds Asina of the midsummer sun, and she feels a chill. As he steps toward her, she falters, fearing he might strike again. But instead, he kneels before her and simply stares. Confused, Asina wonders if her looks are having an effect. The man sighs and bluntly asks how exactly she is beautiful, which irritates her. He then says he was going to kill her immediately but has changed his mind, and that she should be grateful he's sparing her life. Later, Asina wakes up in a scorching hot place and wonders where she is. Parched from the heat, she calls out to see if anyone is there. A man with heavy footsteps approaches, carrying a bucket of water, and splashes it on her. He tells her there's the water she asked for and adds that she'll soon be grateful for it. Let's see how long she can endure the blazing sun. As he leaves, his footsteps echo around the space. Asina laughs and mumbles that at least she feels better now. The splash has made her fully awake. She realizes where she is, a prison built in the center of a city where the sun is most intense. Based on how the prisoners are treated and how the people outside are dressed, she concludes this must be Pesian, the desert kingdom. Her homeland, Cromwall, lies in the northern continent, while Pesian dominates the southern desert and has long held hostile relations with Cromwall. That's why Asina had tried to avoid Pesian while traveling in the southern continent, but after getting lost in the desert, she ended up here. Now isn't the time to dwell on her misfortunes. The prison is designed to torture inmates with deadly heat, and since she's not used to this climate, she knows she'll soon be in critical condition again. That means she needs to get out of here first. Taking out a hairpin she had hidden in her cloak for emergencies, she begins working to unlock the door. Asina inherited her beauty and silvery moon-like hair from her mother, who had always wanted her to grow into an elegant lady. However, whenever Asina ran away from home, her mother would fly into a rage and lock her up. But Asina was never one to simply accept confinement. In fact, being repeatedly imprisoned taught her how to escape, turning her into an expert. Years of breaking out, staying fit while confined, and studying 100 different escape methods had made her strong and prepared for life on the road. Now, having escaped from prison once again, Asina feels relieved. After all, prison is no place for a beautiful woman like her. To stay under the radar, her first step is to blend in by dressing like the locals. In Pesian, women are required to cover their faces to avoid seducing men, a custom she finds ridiculous. Then again, in her case, it's useful since she's on the run. Asina had read about Pesian in books, a beautiful and powerful nation built upon sand, which had always sparked her desire to visit, despite it being an enemy of her homeland Cromwall. Of course, she never imagined she'd arrive as a prisoner. Now free, she experiences the hot air, sandy buildings, and the distinctly different ethnicity of the locals, finding the real Pesian even more incredible than what the books described. It feels like stepping into an entirely new world, and this is exactly why she loves to travel. Grateful, she thanks Lamesha, the goddess of her homeland, and excitedly exclaims, "Hooray!" Only to quickly realize people are nearby and that she may have drawn attention to herself. Reminding herself to be cautious and not get caught, she brushes off her moment of excitement and considers what to do next. She thinks about finding a place to sleep, but first, she needs food. She's starving. Asina buys a kebab and drools over how juicy and delicious the meat looks. Just as she's about to take a bite, she notices something and drops the kebab in shock. She can't believe it. That man is here. When he looks at her with a glint in his eyes, fear grips her. She tries to scamper away, reassuring herself that her face is partially covered and the crowd is dense. Surely, he didn't recognize her. She convinces herself. He definitely didn't. But then she feels a gust and glances back. The man is stepping toward her. Asina falters, and when he stops in front of her, she knows she's in trouble. The moment they lock eyes, he grabs her waist, pulls her close, and says he can tell she escaped from prison like a rat. He demands to know how she did it. Before she can answer, his secretary, Nasir, arrives with others and addresses the man as Sahad, asking if something happened. Sahad shoves Asina toward another man named Umar, saying he's heading back and leaving the woman to him. He warns Umar not to disappoint him. As Asina is dragged away, she fears what Sahad plans to do to her and silently pleads for someone to help her, terrified he's going to kill her. Later, as Nasir accompanies Sahad, he comments that, just as he suspected, the woman isn't ordinary. After all, she managed to escape from that prison. Nasir suggests that Sahad should use her to his advantage. Sahad repeats, "Use her?" Nasir confirms, explaining that, while the woman is aggressive, her manner of speech, appearance, and overall presence are unusual. He suspects she might be the daughter of a noble from the northern continent. Sahad echoes, "A noble in the northern continent." Nasir affirms, saying his instincts point in that direction. He advises Sahad to coax the woman into revealing information about Cromwall, adding that she might even shed light on the relationship between Cromwall and Croatia. Sahad responds by saying he'll bring the woman into his harem. Asina is brought to a large, unfamiliar place where a woman addresses her as "my lady" and asks her to follow. As Asina walks behind her, she wonders where she is. This place is enormous. The woman knocks on a door and invites someone to enter. When the door opens, 3 women step inside and bow to Asina, leaving her confused about who they are. Suddenly, one of them grabs her by the collar and starts undressing her. Asina protests, telling them to stop and demanding to know why they're doing this, but they ignore her. They drag her to a bath, push her in, and begin washing her. Still in shock, Asina thinks they could have at least given her a warning before stripping her and dumping her into the water. Internally, she sighs and tells herself to let it go. After all, what did she expect after being captured and brought here? After the bath, they present her with clothes to wear. Asina is stunned by the outfit and questions whether they seriously expect her to put it on. Meanwhile, in his chamber, Sahad thinks about Asina and smirks. One of his men, noticing, remarks that Sahad must be pleased about something. Sahad replies that he is. After all, he caught the rat. He corrects himself, the cat. Asina puts on the clothes and questions the women, asking if people here really wear such revealing outfits. Her entire stomach is showing. She reflects that she only complied because the women looked ready to knock her out and dress her anyway, but still. Suddenly, she realizes her belongings are missing and wonders if the women took them while undressing her. Her map, money, clothes, and even her portraits of handsome men were in that bag. More importantly, her ledger is gone. Her only item capable of proving her identity in an emergency. This is bad. How will she ever find her things in such a vast place? Still, Asina feels some relief. At least she still has her most important possession, her enchanted earrings. They disguise her identity by making her crimson eyes and silvery hair appear brown. Thanks to them, she's been able to travel freely without being recognized. While Asina groans, lost in thought, the woman from earlier, again addressing her as "my lady," asks what she's waiting for and tells her to come along. Asina follows but grows uneasy as they walk deeper into the building, silently questioning where they're even going. Eventually, the woman opens a door to a luxurious room and tells her this is where she'll be staying, inside the harem. Asina is struck by how fancy the room looks, then freezes as the word harem sinks in. She asks if that's really what the woman said, and the woman confirms it. Asina asks, "Harem, as in the place where a man keeps several women and does whatever he wants with them?" The woman replies, "Yes, that is correct." Shocked, Asina collapses to the floor. Thinking they're insane for throwing her into a harem, she'd rather be thrown back into prison. She blames that man, calling him a complete lunatic. His good looks, she thinks bitterly, are completely wasted on him. The woman urges Asina to get up, saying the floor is cold and that joining the harem is the greatest honor. She should be rejoicing. This enrages Asina, who shouts at her in disbelief, demanding to know if she's serious. She argues that a man should only have one woman, yet she's been brought to a place where a man fools around with many. She questions how that could possibly be considered an honor and calls it unjust, saying women are being treated like toys. The woman calmly asks why Asina thinks that's unjust, adding that she would be thrilled if Sahad considered her his toy. Realizing there's no point in arguing, these people are completely brainwashed, Asina sighs and heads to the bed, silently praying to her homeland's goddess, Lamesha, to save her. She then casually asks why it's so quiet and where the other women are. The woman replies that it's because Asina is the only era in the harem. Asina, confused, repeats, "She's the only woman in the harem?" Elsewhere, Sahad's man informs him that Jalil, the High Chief of Dara, has arrived to see him. Sahad instructs him to let Jalil in. Upon entering, Jalil greets Sahad respectfully, addressing him as Rakuin. Sahad asks what brings the High Chief to him. Jalil explains he heard Rakuin returned safely from the holy oasis of Ishmael and came to offer his greetings. He then mentions hearing that Rakuin brought a fair-skinned woman into his harem. While acknowledging that slaves have been added to the harem in the past, Jalil points out that Rakuin knows nothing about this woman's background. He questions how someone of unknown descent could be placed in such a significant place as the harem. Jalil adds that when he heard the news, he was concerned, and even feared that the rumors about Rakuin's declining judgment might be true. Angry, Sahad crushes the pomegranate in his hand and furiously demands how Jalil dares to insult him. Overwhelmed by Sahad's murderous energy, Jalil becomes alarmed, realizing Sahad might actually kill him. Hastily, he explains that he was only speaking out of concern, but Sahad cuts him off, saying he doesn't need his worthless concern and orders him to leave. Jalil quickly obeys and exits. Meanwhile, Sahad licks the pomegranate juice from his fingers and mutters that Jalil will learn what happens when he challenges him again. In the harem, Asina keeps tossing and turning, thinking how she's truly in a life-or-death situation this time. All she wanted was to see the desert. This is so unfair. But then she pulls herself together, reminding herself that moping around isn't like her. She needs to find a way out of here. There's no way she's going to become the wife of some sleazy man she doesn't even know. She recalls how she once escaped the Fen's notoriously harsh northern prison without breaking a sweat, so getting out of an open place like this should be easy. But there are two major problems. First, she's lost all her belongings. Even if she escapes, she'll die in the desert without her essentials, especially her ledger, the book she created as a symbol of her parents' authority. It grants her access to important routes during her travels. Without it, she can't move freely through the northern continent, let alone the southern one. Recovering the ledger is essential. Second, her enchanted earrings. The camouflage spell on them isn't permanent. They need to be deactivated and rested for a week to avoid breaking. Based on her calculations, they'll last just one more week. That gives her exactly 7 days to escape. For now, the best thing she can do is explore the residence and learn its layout. Getting out of bed, Asina says, "All right, time to head out." She notices that the moon in Pesian glows white, unlike the yellow-hued one back in the north. She wonders why this residence is so enormous. It's practically the size of a palace. The buildings are systematically connected, making infiltration or escape incredibly difficult. She realizes she's currently in the innermost area, which means getting out will be harder than she thought. Silently, Asina questions why that man lives in such a place, and who he really is. She decides her first step is to figure out the purpose of a particular building she spotted earlier. Noticing 2 guards passing by, she waits silently and then carefully jumps down to investigate. As she explores the building, she realizes it's deserted. Though she can't determine its exact purpose, the luxurious decor suggests it belongs to someone powerful. She then heads to the garden and notices someone there. Hiding, she wonders who would be out in the garden so late at night. A chill runs down her spine when she realizes it's that crazy man. Panicked, Asina tries to crawl away unnoticed, but Sahad catches her, remarking that she's truly acting like a rat this time. Suddenly, Sahad grabs her and throws her into the water. He demands to know what she's doing here, asking if she enjoys spying on others or if she really is a spy. Furious, Asina insists she wasn't peeping and that she's not a spy. She fires back, asking who he even is. How could he kidnap a woman in broad daylight without anyone intervening? Sahad replies that in this land, he can do whatever he wants. Irritated, Asina asks if he thinks he's a god or the king. Sahad counters by asking if she would behave more quietly and obediently if he were the king. Confused, Asina replies, "What?" Leaning in close, Sahad whispers his full name, Sihad Zain Behdad, and reveals that he is the ruler of Pesian. Stunned, Asina mutters in disbelief, "He's Rakuin, the living god of Pesian." Sahad smirks, saying he's glad she at least knows what Rakuin means. Without warning, Sahad lifts Asina onto his shoulders and begins walking. Shocked, Asina demands to know what he's doing and tells him to let her go. She scolds him, asking how he dares to manhandle a beautiful woman, warning that he'll be punished for it. Internally, Asina wonders where this man is taking her. Sahad enters a room and throws her onto a bed, making her let out a sound from the impact. He then questions whether she's a spy from Cromwall. Asina knows she must not reveal she's from Cromwall under any circumstances. She tells him she's from the northern continent, but not from Cromwall, and insists she's certainly not a spy. Still suspicious, Sahad asks why she was headed to Croatia then. Asina replies it was simply for sightseeing, nothing more, nothing less. She pleads with him to believe that she's just an innocent traveler. After a pause, Sahad says, "Well, all right," but then casually asks if she's trying to seduce him. Confused, Asina asks what he means. She notices him staring and wonders what he's looking at, until she glances down and realizes her clothes have become transparent after getting soaked. Flustered, she demands to know what he's staring at. Sahad suddenly pushes her onto the bed, reminding her that she claimed to be a beautiful woman earlier. Asina remembers saying that, but also how he scoffed at her at the time, saying she wasn't beautiful. She tells him to move, but Sahad adds to his earlier remark, saying that while he still can't say if she's beautiful overall, she does have beautiful eyes. As he kisses her, Asina resists, realizing how strong he is and how dangerous this could become if she doesn't act. She shoves him away. Sahad simply grins and says, "Welcome to my harem, outsider." The next morning, Asina wakes to find an unfamiliar woman before her and asks who she is. The woman bows and introduces herself as Nur, the maid assigned to serve her from now on. Addressing her as Era, Nur says it's an honor to meet her. Asina greets her in return, silently wondering if Sahad assigned this maid to keep an eye on her, because she'd been sneaking around the residence the previous night. Nur excitedly mentions she had heard the Era had fair skin, and now sees for herself that Asina truly isn't from Pesian. Asina confirms this, then asks why everyone keeps calling her Era. What does it mean? Nur explains that the term refers to the Kuin's women. Asina has now become a woman of noble status who can serve Sahad. She congratulates her, but Asina silently retorts that no one gets to tell her whom to serve. Asina then asks Nur if she can ask her a question. Nur firmly tells her not to speak so politely. After all, she's her servant. Asina agrees and asks if that means Nur must follow her everywhere. Internally, Asina groans. She needs to plan her escape, and she can't have Nur watching her constantly. While pouring tea into a cup, Nur replies that she's only there to assist and won't be following the Era everywhere. She hands Asina the tea and says that if she ever finds her bothersome, she's free to send her away. Asina says she understands and feels a quiet wave of relief. Before leaving, Nur tells her to call if she needs anything and encourages her to enjoy her rest. Asina thanks her. Left alone, Asina sighs, finding it hard to believe she's being referred to as the Rakuin's woman. She reflects on the stark contrast between Cromwall and Pesian. In Cromwall, people worship a formless goddess named Lamesha. In contrast, Pesian is ruled directly by its god, a deity who manifests as the nation's ruler. This god is said to have brought water to the arid desert, enabling plant life to flourish, and is known as the Kuin. In Pesian, the Kuin is far more than just a monarch. The entire political, economic, cultural, and societal structure revolves around him. He is worshipped as a living god. Asina sighs again, still stunned that that man is actually the Rakuin. Recalling the events of the previous night, her face flushes with embarrassment. Trembling with frustration, she insists to herself that she doesn't care if he is the Kuin. He can't just do whatever he wants. This is seriously getting on her nerves. And worst of all, that was her first kiss. Fuming, Asina angrily wishes the man would trip and fall flat on his bum. Elsewhere in the palace, Secretary Nasir reports to Sahad about a man named Jihad, stating that Jihad hasn't been acting any differently than usual and likely doesn't realize how much they already know about his actions. Nasir asks what the Rakuin wishes them to do. Sahad replies to leave Jihad alone for now. He's curious to see how far Jihad will take his insolence. Nasir complies. Another man, Karim, quietly urges Nasir to ask about the woman recently added to the harem. Nasir brings it up, prompting Sahad to ask impatiently, "What is it now?" Nasir expresses concern that placing that woman in the harem may have been a hasty decision. What should have been a fleeting amusement now appears to have become a more permanent arrangement. He begins to reference the fallout from that day, hinting at unrest in the harem, but stops mid-sentence when Sahad glares at him. Flinching, Nasir apologizes for misspeaking. Karim steps in to support Nasir, saying he isn't entirely wrong. He explains that the Grand Vizier will not be pleased, as he had long hoped to place his own daughters in the harem. Additionally, the 6 high chiefs and 48 regional chiefs will now all push to have their daughters accepted as well. After a short pause, Sahad says he wants to learn more about that woman and orders them to bring her to him. Nur rushes in to inform Asina that the Rakuin wishes to see her. Asina protests, saying she's in the middle of eating, but Nur insists she must go despite that. Irritated, Asina follows, silently complaining that just when she was finally comforting herself with food, that man suddenly wants to see her. She questions why she must come running to him whenever he calls. What is she, a dog? Upon arrival, Nur tells Sahad she has brought the Era and then quickly excuses herself. Internally, Asina pleads for Nur not to leave, worried about being alone with Sahad again. Who knows what he might do this time? Now alone with him, Asina finds herself too embarrassed to meet Sahad's eyes. He asks how long she plans to avoid his gaze and casually inquires how her first night in the harem was. Furious, Asina calls him shameless in her mind and decides to play along if that's what he wants. She answers coolly that she wasn't avoiding his gaze, she was just preparing herself. As for her night, it was splendid, thanks to him. Then she sharply adds, "What about him?" As Sahad rises from the throne, he remarks that if Asina enjoyed the harem so much, he'd gladly let her stay there forever. How about it? Though internally fuming, Asina forces a smile and sarcastically wonders if this jerkface king is joking. Out loud, she politely declines, saying she appreciates the offer but must respectfully refuse. Sahad steps closer, commenting that she was like an untamed cat last night but seems unusually docile today. Grabbing her waist, he suspiciously asks if she's secretly plotting something. As he holds her hand, he notices how soft it feels and reflects that what Nasir said might hold some truth. He then questions her again about why she was heading to Croatia. Asina replies, as before, that it was for sightseeing. But before she can finish, Sahad cuts her off sharply, warning that if she says the word sightseeing one more time, he'll seal her mouth permanently. Asina flinches at the sight of those eyes of his again. Whenever this man looks at her, it feels as if she's completely exposed. The way he scans her from head to toe stirs a feeling she's never experienced before. Yet, amidst her confusion, one thing is certain. Her intuition is screaming at her to get away from him. Trying to maintain her composure, Asina says she heard the dates in Croatia are delicious. It's famous for them. That's why she wanted to go there. She also wanted to see what the desert houses looked like, and she trails off, unable to remember the rest. Internally frustrated, she curses herself for forgetting the ton of other reasons she had. Sahad bluntly calls it nonsense. He says no one would cross the desert of death just for that. Asina's eyes widen, realizing for the first time that the desert she crossed is known by that terrifying name. Just then, one of Sahad's men apologetically interrupts to announce the arrival of the royal secretary. Asina immediately recognizes him. It's the same man she saw before, and she silently calls him her savior. Sahad, however, doesn't seem pleased by Nasir's arrival. Nasir, observing the situation, explains that he came because the Rakuin summoned him, but offers to leave if needed. Sahad tells him to stay and invites him in. He introduces Nasir to Asina as his secretary. When he tries to introduce Asina in return, he pauses, realizing he doesn't know her name, and asks what it is. Annoyed, Asina internally notes it took him long enough to ask, and replies that her name is Asina. Nasir greets her formally, calling her Lady Asina, and says it's a pleasure to meet her again. He admits he didn't recognize her in her new attire and compliments her beauty, adding that the Rakuin must be pleased. Asina responds confidently, saying of course, she is a beautiful woman after all. Sahad remarks that he's impressed she can still speak like that in her current situation. Letting out a sigh, Sahad instructs Nasir to take her away. Asina wonders why he keeps sending her off somewhere. As they leave, Nasir looks back and nods at Sahad, a silent acknowledgement of a prior discussion. Earlier, Sahad had told Nasir that perhaps the woman was afraid of him. She hadn't answered his questions, but she didn't seem like someone who could be easily intimidated either. Maybe Nasir, with a gentler approach, could coax the truth out of her. Sahad had tasked him with discovering her true identity, and Nasir had agreed to take on the responsibility. Following Sahad's orders, Nasir takes Asina with him to begin investigating her background. He starts by asking, since she said she isn't from Cromwall, where she is from. Asina replies that she comes from Sigrin, a very small kingdom located along Cromwall's southeastern border. Nasir expresses surprise, saying he didn't know such a place existed. Asina explains it's so small that few people have heard of it. Internally, however, she admits she only stopped in Sigrin on her way out of Cromwall. Still, she reasons it's not a complete lie. Nasir only asked where she came from, not where she was born. Then Asina asks if she may pose a question of her own, and Nasir readily agrees. She inquires about the desert where she was captured. Why is it called the Desert of Death? Nasir explains she's referring to Jarda, the Desert of Death. It earned its name because the terrain doesn't retain water even when it rains, making water extremely scarce. Constant winds also reshape the topography, making it dangerously easy to get lost. In such harsh conditions, anyone stranded for even a few days is likely to die. He adds that many travelers and entire exiled clans have perished in Jarda, which is why it has earned that ominous name. Asina realizes that explains why she didn't see anyone while crossing the desert. Nasir adds that there are also rumors that the desert is haunted and cursed, though he personally doesn't believe in those stories. Internally, Nasir reflects that he still can't tell if Asina is telling the truth. It seems he'll need to test her further. He casually brings up that Croatia and Pesian are currently enemies and watches for her reaction. Asina feigns ignorance, replying that she didn't know that. She admits she was aware Croatia was founded by people who opposed the creation of Pesian, but she didn't realize the two nations were on such poor terms. Nasir explains that a recent conflict has escalated tensions between Pesian and Croatia, which is why their relationship is currently strained. He repeats his question, subtly pressing her. So Lady Asina truly wasn't aware? Asina responds that in the north, records about southern political developments often arrive years late. Nasir simply replies that he understands. Asina then remarks that now she understands why she was treated like a criminal. Reflecting to herself, she realizes that, of all people, she had asked the king of Pesian for directions to Pesian's enemy nation, and on top of that, she escaped from prison. Looking back, she acknowledges their suspicion was justified. Perhaps she thinks she should actually be grateful they only threw her in prison. Nasir asks if he may pose a question to Lady Asina, and she agrees. He brings up the desert again, noting that guides typically recommend traveling around it since all northerners heading to Croatia take that safer route, so why did she choose to go through it? Asina replies that while the guides did suggest the safer route, she refused. Nasir admits he finds her decision even more puzzling, considering the danger. Based on what she said so far, he still can't determine if she's lying, but he believes he'll know for sure once he hears her reason for crossing the desert. Asina explains that in the northern continent, The mountains change color with the seasons and the fields are green and beautiful. But what the north doesn't have is an ocean made of sand. That's why she wanted to see the desert. Nasir responds that he understands, but internally notes that even though he was born and raised in Pesian's deserts, he never once saw them that way. He then asks her thoughts now that she's seen the desert firsthand. Asina answers that it was even more breathtaking than she had imagined. So beautiful, in fact, that she didn't mind the idea of melting under the burning sun. That's why it shocked her to learn that such a beautiful place is called the Desert of Death. Nasir concludes that Asina is telling the truth. Smiling, he says he understands now, and adds that Lady Asina might be the only person in the world who would call the Desert of Death beautiful. Internally, he reflects that no one could doubt her sincerity after looking into her eyes. He then places her bag on the table, explaining that her belongings have been examined. They will return the items that appeared harmless, but will retain those that raise suspicion. Asina thinks that's acceptable. Her most important possession, the ledger, is protected by a spell. Nasir tells her that this concludes today's investigation, and says he expects to see her often from now on. He adds that he looks forward to it. Asina replies that that would be nice, mentioning that she has trouble staying in one place for too long. Later, Nasir summons Karim and informs him that he needs him to guard the harem for the time being, as a lady has finally been brought in. Displeased, Karim asks what Nasir is talking about, reminding him that he is the Rakuin's tamer. The desert's warriors were strong because they had no other choice if they wished to survive in the barren land. Among these warriors, a select few lived solely to serve the Rakuin, regardless of their clan affiliation. These elite warriors were known as tamers, and Karim was the most skilled among them. Clearly unhappy, Karim asks if Nasir is referring to that foreign woman. Nasir notes that Karim doesn't look too pleased about it. Karim demands to know who she is, and why she's so important that Nasir is assigning him to guard her. Nasir explains that there are more than a few suspicious things about her. Her reason for coming to Pesian is unclear, and her belongings are questionable in several ways. He adds that it also doesn't make sense for a woman to be traveling alone. Karim responds that he doesn't understand. If she's suspicious, why not just kill her? Nasir admits that while that is an option, he didn't get the impression that she's a spy, and that's exactly what makes it odd. He also mentions that he's not the only one making the request. These are Sahad's orders as well. Nasir adds that he's sure there's a reason Sahad placed her in his harem. Finally, he asks Karim if he intends to disobey the Sahad. Reluctantly, Karim gives in. While resting on the bed in the harem, Asina reflects on Nasir. He seemed like a kind person, but she wonders if he truly believes her claim of being a traveler. Given her behavior so far, she wouldn't be surprised if he suspects her of being a spy. Asina considers the political situation. Cromwall and Croatia are allies, but both are enemies of Pesian. If her identity is exposed, especially after she admitted she was headed to Croatia, it could bring serious consequences not just for her, but for her family and Cromwall as well. Of course, she knows her parents wouldn't be easily shaken by such a conflict. Her father supports her travels, and her mother, though strict, loves her deeply. Still, Asina doesn't want to cause them any more trouble. She already gives them enough to worry about. Letting out a sigh, she wonders what she should do next. Nur knocks on the door and asks to come in. Asina asks what it is, and Nur replies that the tamer assigned to guard her has arrived. Asina recalls that a tamer is the man who serves as the Rakuin's bodyguard. She tells Nur to send him in. Nur tries to warn the tamer, Karim, to wait so Lady Asina can prepare herself, but he ignores her and barges in. Karim strides directly over to Asina and glares at her. From his expression, Asina immediately understands. He's silently asking what someone like her is doing here. Still, she's used to receiving unwelcoming stares as an outsider and knows the best response is politeness. She greets Karim courteously, apologizing for not covering her face. She explains that she isn't familiar with the local etiquette yet and hopes he understands. Karim, surprised, thinks to himself that he expected someone more rugged. After all, this woman supposedly broke out of Jahannam. How could someone so physically frail make it all the way to Pesian from the northern continent? He wonders if he misjudged her. Karim apologizes for his rudeness and introduces himself. Asina does the same and asks him to call her by her name instead of Era, if possible. Karim agrees, addressing her as Lady Asina. He tells her he'll be standing guard outside the harem at all times and asks her to call him if she needs anything. Asina replies that she will. After Nur and Karim leave, Asina reflects that now, in addition to Nur, there's another person, Karim, watching her. Escaping from this place will be even more difficult. Feeling restless, she decides to take a walk. Sitting around won't help. She plans to check out the layout of the nearby buildings. While on her way, Sahad appears and asks where she's going. Asina is startled. He's the last person she wanted to run into. She tells him to stop glaring at her. She already knows she looks suspicious. Sahad sarcastically remarks that she only just figured that out. Unbelievable. Asina then asks why he's here, and Sahad responds that he doesn't need a reason to visit his own harem. Asina clarifies that that's not what she meant and presses him for the real reason. She suggests that if it's about the investigation, Nasir must have already updated him. But Sahad tells her he came because he wanted to see her. Shocked and flustered, Asina asks if he's out of his mind. Sahad laughs at her reaction. Internally, he reflects that being around her is anything but boring. Most people who look at him either fear or revere him. But this woman shows neither. She sees him exactly as he is. Her fearless gaze is both surprising and intriguing. Sahad kisses her hair and asks if she finds the harem comfortable. Blushing, Asina asks how much longer he plans to hover over her. Sahad wonders whether she's uncomfortable around him specifically, or simply because he's a man. He recalls that he was only testing her earlier, but now it's clear she's inexperienced with men, which he finds interesting. Asina comments that if she had known he was the Rakuin, she wouldn't have asked him for directions. Sahad points out that a woman traveling alone through the desert of death, asking for directions to an enemy nation, is suspicious enough, but what really interests him is how she escaped from Jahannam. Asina realizes that Jahannam refers to that prison. Suddenly, Sahad opens the room's door, steps inside, slams it shut behind him, and pins her against a pillar. He tells her that no one has ever escaped from Jahannam before, and asks if she expects him to believe it was just a coincidence. Asina, internally, thinks the lock wasn't that hard to pick, but aloud she says the gate was open, so she just walked out. Sahad warns her to think carefully about the consequences before saying something so absurd. Asina nervously laughs and admits he's probably right. She then yanks her hand away and asks what she must do for him to let her go. Sahad tells her to bring him proof, evidence that she's truly innocent, and only then will he let her go. The next day, while Nur helps her get ready, Asina bitterly thinks that instead of bringing the Rakuin evidence, it would be faster to just run away. She's also frustrated that he stayed in the harem all night, leaving her unable to sleep. She hopes he doesn't show up again today. As she and Nur walk through the harem, Asina marvels at its size and asks if harems are normally this large. Nur explains that while a harem usually houses the Kuin's wives, this palace's harem also shelters young orphaned girls, hence its vastness. Skeptical, Asina asks if the Kuin turns those girls into concubines once they grow up. Nur admits it has happened in some cases, but usually, the Kuin marries them off to important Pesian figures. There are 6 high chiefs and 48 chiefs in total, and the Kuin strategically gives them brides from his harem to prevent them from forming powerful external alliances. Asina says she understands, then asks if there's anyone at the palace she should be especially wary of. Though she already considers the Rakuin the most dangerous, she hopes to avoid offending anyone else. After some thought, Nur tells her that aside from Sahad, the most powerful person in the palace is likely the Grand Vizier, Gedik. In the Rakuin's court, the Grand Vizier Gedik arrives to meet Sahad, apologizing for not visiting sooner due to being occupied with state affairs. Sahad replies that he understands. It must have been difficult for Gedik to manage Pesian alone in his absence. However, inwardly, Sahad calls it a lie, suspecting the crafty vizier deliberately stayed away. Gedik proposes holding a banquet to celebrate Sahad's safe return. Sahad questions whether it's really necessary, but Gedik insists. He explains that Sahad's pilgrimage to Ishmael, known for its harshness, had the people fasting and praying for a safe return, so a banquet would be appropriate. The pilgrimage to the holy oasis of Ishmael is a dangerous journey. Each time the Kuin embarks on it, the people of Pesian fast and pray for a safe return, fearing the desert might claim him and that their god might abandon them. When the Kuin returns unharmed, a week-long banquet is held in celebration. Sahad, however, suspects that Gedik has ulterior motives for suggesting the banquet. Gedik denies it, but Sahad quietly laughs and plays along, saying he'll look forward to it. When Sahad asks if that's all Gedik came for, Gedik makes a bold move. He offers his daughter, Jakia, to join Sahad's harem, reminding him that he once rejected her by claiming disinterest in women, which now appears to have changed. Sahad internally notes that Gedik is openly prying into his personal affairs. He tells Gedik that he appreciates the gesture, but refuses to accept anyone else into his harem. When Gedik presses for clarification, Sahad stands up, signaling the end of the conversation. Gedik tries to continue, but a sharp glare from Sahad silences him instantly. Meanwhile, while exploring the harem, Asina senses someone watching her. Though they're masking their presence well, she still detects it. She checks behind a pillar and finds Kareem hiding there. Confronting him, she asks why he's inside the harem instead of guarding it from the outside. Realizing he's been spying on her out of suspicion, Asina decides to tease him. She comments that now that she's taking a closer look, she can see how handsome he is. She asks if he has a lover, implying he must be popular with women. Internally, she plans to chat his ear off and wear him down. She then touches his sword, asking whether it's a scimitar or a shamshir, and excitedly requests to hold it. Kareem, skilled at dealing with men but awkward around women, begins to stammer and panic. Asina keeps going, asking when he became a tamer, whether he had to take a test, and when he first picked up a sword, leaving him overwhelmed. Sahad suddenly appears, asking when the two of them became so friendly. Nasir follows, questioning why Sahad rushed in so suddenly, but Sahad ignores him and focuses on Kareem, whose face turns pale with fear. Sahad pointedly asks Asina if his tamer is to her liking. Nasir silently warns her not to provoke the Kuin, but Asina boldly replies that of course, every woman fantasizes about knights, and Kareem is quite handsome. Nasir internally pleads with her to stop. Sahad, displeased, says he understands. Asina sarcastically asks if that's why he came, to inquire about her taste in men. Sighing, Sahad calls on Nasir, who steps in and claims he wanted to speak with Lady Asina. He explains that he's curious about the northern continent and hopes to ask her questions, since she's from there. In response, Asina holds out her hand and asks if he expects her to answer for free. Caught off guard, Nasir glances at Sahad, then asks Asina if there's anything she would like in return. Asina thinks he's fallen for her bait and requests her bag back. Nasir is surprised, and Sahad asks why she wants it so badly and what exactly is inside, noting that he heard there's even a lock spell cast on it. Asina, panicked and unsure of what to say, blurts out that it contains her underwear, which is why she sealed it, to keep anyone from seeing inside. Her blunt answer shocks Kareem and Nasir, but Sahad bursts out laughing. Asina, flustered, insists she's serious, and Sahad, still amused, says she's truly unpredictable, then instructs Nasir to give her the bag. Nasir complies. Nasir takes Asina with him to return her bag and invites her to help herself to the dates on the table. Asina, delighted, asks what he wants to know about the North. Nasir says he has questions about Cromwall and asks her to share anything she knows. Asina hesitates, but decides it's safe to share common knowledge. She replies, okay, and begins sharing with Nasir details about Cromwall's nature, religion, and politics. As she speaks, she internally reflects on her homeland's beauty, its beautiful people, and her deep pride in it. She's loved Cromwall ever since she was born, and has only grown fonder of it since she began traveling. She tells Nasir that Cromwall is protected by two powerful families, the Cardians, masters of swordsmanship, and the Astatias, renowned scholars. With their support, the imperial family remains unchallenged, resulting in a stable political system, so stable, in fact, that Cromwall has never experienced a rebellion. Nasir thanks her, saying she gave him a lot of interesting information. He then remarks that she seems to know quite a lot about Cromwall. Asina flinches and quickly replies that it's just common knowledge. Any northerner could have told him the same. Smiling, Nasir thinks really, and says that's enough for today. He asks her to tell him more next time. Surprised, Asina asks about her bag, but Nasir replies he'll return it once he's asked all his questions. Asina realizes she's been duped. Later that night, Asina heads out again to learn the palace layout, feeling like she's back to square one. She notes the lax security, consistent guard numbers, and predictable patrol times, believing escape will be easy once she maps everything out. Her biggest challenge is reaching Sirte, a city between the northern and southern continents, after escaping, but she decides to focus on getting out of the palace first. Suddenly, she senses someone watching her and wonders how they detected her. She's too high up for anyone to see her. She quickly hides. Nearby, a man murmurs, a woman, prompting Grand Vizier Gedik, who is with him, to ask if something is wrong. The man looks around, and Gedik, confused, addresses him as High Chief. The man brushes it off, saying he thought he sensed someone nearby, but assumes it was just a small animal. Asina returns to the harem and gets into the bath, feeling relieved. She had feared that man had caught her. Though it was only a brief moment, his presence deeply unsettled her. Unlike the overwhelming gaze of Pesian's king, his felt like a snake tightening around her entire body. Asina never wants to see that man again. Suddenly, Asina notices her earrings have changed color and hurriedly takes them off. She knew their mana was low, but hadn't expected them to fade so soon. With no other choice, she partially lifts the spell. After her bath, as Nur brushes her hair, Asina thinks, hopefully, the magic will last a little longer now that she's lifted the spell slightly on her eyes. It's good the color change isn't too noticeable. Nur doesn't seem to have noticed. Then Nur remembers and informs Asina that the Rakuin has been waiting for her since earlier. After Nur leaves, Asina checks the room and is stunned to find Sahad sitting in a chair reading a book. She asks why he keeps coming by so often. Did he bury a treasure here or something? Sahad responds that he doesn't need a reason to visit his beloved concubine. Irritated, Asina tells him to stop joking around, then sarcastically says fine, he can do whatever he wants. Sahad comments that he's always thought her hair is really long and asks if it's inconvenient while traveling. Asina agrees it is, and explains she originally planned to cut it when she started traveling, but her entire family, parents, cousins, and friends would have been outraged. To avoid the fuss, she just let it grow. Sahad then asks if she's an only child, since she hasn't mentioned any siblings. Asina says yes, but she has cousins who are like siblings to her growing up. She sits down in a chair, and Sahad softly says her name, Asina. She turns and he approaches, asking if that's her real name. Asina says yes and questions whether he really thought she'd lie about something like that. She explains her father held family votes for 3 months to choose her name, which means light and blessings in ancient Sahanian. Sahad reflects that there's still much he doesn't know about Asina, but he can guess a few things. She isn't twisted or melancholic. He can tell from the way she speaks about her parents, and even just by looking at her. Holding her face, he says she seems like someone raised with love, unlike himself, he silently thinks. He then expresses his curiosity about why a woman from a loving family would leave home and choose such a difficult path. Annoyed, Asina yanks her hand away and sarcastically addresses him as Mr. asking why he's always at home. Offended, Sahad reacts to being called Mr. And Asina flinches, realizing she may have been too rude. After all, he's the king. She quickly asks if she should call him Your Majesty or Rakuin. Sahad firmly says no. Asina then tries Sahad and asks what the name means, noting that Nasir also calls him that. Sahad explains that Sahad is the name of God, so it means my God. Asina says she understands and asks what she should call him, reflecting that his full name is Sihad Zain Behdad. Sahad means God and Rakuin means king, so maybe his real name is Behdad. She asks if she may call him Bihi. Grinning, Sahad replies that it sounds good. Asina's heart skips a beat. It's the first time she's seen him smile. Asina, now calling him Bihi, asks why he keeps asking so many questions about her. Shouldn't he have more important things to do? Sahad replies that perhaps it's because he's fallen for her. His words stop Asina in her tracks, and she tells him to stop saying things he doesn't mean. Sahad walks up to her, grabs her hand, pulls her closer, and asks what makes her think he doesn't mean it. Asina blushes and looks at him, and he kisses her. Asina wonders why he's doing this so suddenly, thinking it's dangerous and she needs to get away from him. But before she can act, Sahad steps back on his own. He pauses, realizing he nearly lost control, and questions himself. Why did he act that way, and who exactly is this woman to him? Sahad tells Asina she seems inexperienced with men. Irritated, Asina snaps back, asking why she needs to be experienced. Sahad replies that if she were, he wouldn't have stepped back after just a kiss. Furious, Asina demands to know why he's doing this to her. Sahad says again that he's fallen for her, so he's holding back and pretending not to notice the change in her eye color. Terrified, Asina wonders how he could have noticed. She believed the change was so subtle no one would detect it unless they were looking closely. Playing innocent, she asks what he means and insists on checking her reflection. Internally, she tells herself to stay calm. Maybe he's testing her. That's his specialty, after all. She looks in the mirror and strengthens the spell on her eyes, then asks if his eyes might be playing tricks on him, since she can't see a difference. Sahad stays silent as he sees Asina's eye color has returned to normal. He's sure he hadn't imagined the change. He's always watching those eyes. Every time he learns something about her, he becomes curious about something else. Though she puts up her guard when he gets close, she never pushes him away. She doesn't seem deceitful, yet she's clearly hiding many things. Sahad wonders who she really is and why he's willing to fall for her tricks. In the end, he tells Asina he must have been mistaken. Later, Sahad asks Asina why she travels. She responds that it's only natural, since the world they were born into is so beautiful, it would be a shame to stay in one place until death. She asks if he agrees. Sahad replies that it's an odd thing to say, he's never even considered leaving this place before. Asina says she understands. Most people find her strange. Then she asks when Bihi plans to leave. Sahad asks if there's a problem with him being there. Asina says yes, she doesn't think she can sleep with him around. Sahad asks why not. Asina retorts, does she really have to explain that to him? In response, Sahad hugs her. When she asks what he's doing, he tells her to just go to sleep, unless she wants to continue where they left off earlier. Asina remembers the kiss, grunts, and eventually falls asleep. The next day, as Nur helps her get ready, Asina wonders if this is a new kind of torture. Thanks to Bihi, she couldn't sleep a wink. She usually prefers wandering around at night, when no one can see her, but she hasn't had the chance because Bihi keeps visiting in the evenings. Silently, Asina tells herself to get it together. If she can't sneak out at night, she'll have to do it during the day, or she'll never find an escape route. Later, while walking through the harem with Nur, Asina notices something and asks if it's just her or if the palace seems busier today. Nur confirms it's true. They're preparing for the upcoming banquet. When Asina asks about it, Nur explains it's being held in honor of Sahad's safe return, with a grand festival planned both inside and outside the palace. Asina responds with interest, but internally thinks this could make escaping easier. With crowds flocking to the festival, no one will notice her absence. She decides the second day of the banquet will be the perfect time to run away. Meanwhile, a lady watches Asina from afar. Asina also notes she'll need to create a distraction for anyone monitoring her, like Kareem. Just then, Asina spots Kareem passing nearby and calls out to him, asking where he's headed. Clearly not pleased to run into her, Kareem tries to slip away, but Asina grabs him and presses the question, teasing that he's acting like he's seen a ghost. Kareem, who has been avoiding her ever since Sahad glared at him, reluctantly gives in. Asina remarks that the talented swordsmen around her seem to prefer quiet, well-behaved women, and asks if Kareem is the same. Kareem thinks she's a handful and notes her tendency to ramble. Asina, meanwhile, plans to pester Kareem until he's too worn out to keep watching her. Kareem sighs and asks why Lady Asina keeps questioning him. Does she have an interest in him? If so, he suggests she redirect it to another tamer. Asina replies that she is indeed very interested in getting to know him. Kareem groans, then warns her that while he understands her curiosity about tamers, they aren't even supposed to be speaking according to the law. Just then, the same lady who had been watching Asina earlier appears and agrees with Kareem. She asks how an era like Asina could be flirting with a tamer and what she would do if the Sahad were to find out.